Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again to MCJ Report number 186. Hopefully all of you are having a lovely evening from wherever it is that you are tuned in from. So before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, in typical fashion, why don't you go ahead and share the broadcast, get the word out there. A big welcome to everybody currently tuned in on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube. So go ahead and hit that share button, and as you know, we do what we do here on MCJ Report. We'll tell the other side of the story, otherwise left untold by the mainstream media. We'll dig several layers deeper than what the mainstream media care to dig in the vast majority of instances. And we just get to it, don't we, ladies and gentlemen? We call a spade on MCJ Report. We're not here to tolerate any type of unfit behavior by the government. You know what we do, and that's why you like watching MCJ Report. And if you tuned in for your first time, I am, of course, your host, Morgan C. Jonas. And there's Tony, Aaron, Margaret, Izza, Jess saying hi, freedom lovers. Great to see you as always. There's Aaron saying he apologizes. He'll be watching another show. Aaron, not good enough, mate. You can't do that, mate. Nah, I'm joking. You go and do what you need to do. And that is the beauty of being a free person. If you want to watch MCJ Report, then watch MCJ Report. If you want to go somewhere else, then maybe I'll catch you next time. How about that? Alrighty, there's Betty there. Awesome stuff. We've got a bit of a crowd gathering, ladies and gentlemen. So tonight on the show, as you probably have assumed by now, of course, we're going to be talking about the events that took place on Saturday right here in Melbourne. That's right, Melbourne, Australia, or otherwise referred to as the Socialist Republic of Victoria, which I think is becoming a more and more fitting description for our beautiful state. But beautiful cannot be a word described for the average character that works within the walls of our parliaments. That's right, some of them are good. That's right, some of them are good, but unfortunately, many of them are bad. So don't worry, we're going to be talking about them on the show. Of course, on Saturday, we had the Let Women Speak rally right here in Melbourne, Australia. But unfortunately, the women were not given the platform that we were hoping for. That's right, there was, of course, an event that took place with some neo-Nazi types that were able to grab every single headline. And the most devastating aspect of this is that there were many women at that rally that had very insightful things to say. They were expressing concerns that are specific to women. But unfortunately, their voices were drowned out. So we're going to give them a voice tonight on MCJ Report. But of course, what we've seen, right, is the leader of the opposition, John Pesutto. That's right. I think I said his name correctly. If not, then oh well. He hasn't indicated he is going ahead with his motion to have Moria Deeming expelled from the Liberal Party. So we're going to have a bit of a talk about that. Why is he doing it? Was it a knee-jerk reaction? Is there pressure on him from Dan Andrews? Because I've been listening to John and what he has had to say over the past few days, and sometimes I had to actually sit back and think, am I listening to the leader of the opposition, or has Daniel Andrews somehow changed his appearance and has all of a sudden looks like John Pesutto? Anyway, I'm sure we'll get there in the end. So we're going to talk about that, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to give you my thoughts in relation to why I think this move has been made. I think there's a bit of an internal battle going on in the Liberal Party between the left wing and the right wing. That's right. So the left faction of the Liberal Party, perhaps having it out for the Conservatives, looking to get rid of people that speak up. And I think it was just a very convenient excuse for the Liberal leader there, John, and I'm not gonna bother trying to pronounce his last name, at least until a bit later in the show, because that's don't really care. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it, shall we? I've got some headlines to go through. So once again, go ahead and share the broadcast. Get the word out there, ladies and gentlemen, because we are MCJ Report and we do what we do. Alrighty, so starting off here, we're not starting there. All right, let's go through some headlines. Queensland, raise your hand if you tuned in from Queensland. All right, Palaszczuk's government rent caps proposal, a policy on the run. Have a listen to this.
This is a big issue for families. They are constantly being faced with huge increases in rent.
All right, so the Premier there of Queensland, she actually wants to cap rent. Now, this may sound all well and good in a perfect world, and of course she's trying to position herself as somebody who cares about the little guy, somebody who cares about the increases to the cost of living for the everyday Queenslander. But here's the truth, ladies and gentlemen. We look throughout the country and we see the extent to which our economy has been mismanaged. That's right, especially throughout the past few years through COVID-19. We, of course, see one interest rate hike after another. Yet the government, unfortunately, they point the finger. Liberal points at Labor, Labor points at Liberal. But neither party actually get to the bottom of the reason why Australia is experiencing this economic crisis, which once again is indeed economic mismanagement. Now, it's all very well and good for state premiers to come out and offer to supposedly freeze rental prices. And wouldn't that be fantastic in a perfect world, ladies and gentlemen? Because right here in Melbourne, we know that for sure our rental market is surging, which is putting a lot of pressure on renters. And we know in some areas, rent is up over 30%. But there's a few problems there, isn't there, ladies and gentlemen? The costs for property owners, they don't go down. The mortgage repayments do not go down. In fact, they're going up, of course, because of the increases in interest rate payments. So where is the shortfall going to come from for people who own properties? How are property owners going to be able to service their loans if rental prices are capped? So what we see here is basically I would say a charade by the Queensland Premier, pretending to engage in an act of compassion that will never actually materialize because it is just not viable. And I think that she's hopefully seeking to, I think in her mind, she's seeking to speak to an ear of a certain cohort of voters. Once again, just empty words, and these people should be ignored at all costs. All right, moving along here. Maybe some of you saw this. Of course, this was from last week. Dutch Farmers Party scores big election wins. So it's very inspiring, isn't it, when we see political victories overseas. Of course, in the Netherlands, we've got this pro-freedom party, pro-farmers. They stand for a lot of the same ideals of which you, I, and many others in our country have been advocating for several years now, achieving 15 seats in the Senate. That's right, that's more seats than the party of which holds government in their lower house. So effectively, this pro-freedom party is now in a wonderful position whereby they can amend legislation, they can reject legislation, and they effectively can pass legislation as long as it meets their criteria. So it'll be very interesting to keep tabs on what happens over there in the Netherlands and to pay close attention to the types of policy and bills that are put before their parliaments and the extent to which this party, which now of course has this majorly controlling stake in the Senate, is able to influence legislation, and how that will translate in terms of affecting the quality of people's lives over in the Netherlands, which we presume, of course, will have a most definitely positive impact for millions of people. It'll also be interesting to pay close attention to the policies drafted by the likes of the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, and whether or not this party in the Netherlands will be seeking to blueprint and accept such types of bills in their parliaments. Of course, we're very concerned about lots of different notions, the increases in surveillance and pandemic management. So I'll be keeping my eye on what goes on over across the pond, ladies and gentlemen, and I suggest that you do too, because I say that we should draw inspiration from people overseas who are kicking the type of goals that we wish we were kicking in Australia right now. All right, Xi Jinping delivers a, quote, chilling message for the West as he tells, quote, dear friend Vladimir Putin, change is coming that hasn't happened in 100 years and we are driving it. That's right. So, ladies and gentlemen, the president of China has taken a trip to Russia and has been hanging out, talking with, having meetings with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. Now, it's important to point out that China and Russia are not official allies on paper. But what we've seen, of course, is that they indeed have a shared interest. When I'm talking about they, I'm referring to these two countries, China and Russia. And in this instance, it's kind of to the effect of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Now, in the past, of course, there have been tensions, diplomatic tensions between these two countries. Russia has been very critical of China, alleging, in fact, that China has indeed stolen Russian intellectual property along the lines of military technology and equipment. And there have also been disputes in relation to the border that is on the western side of China in regards to certain resources, exports and passages and things like that. But what we see, of course, is Russia and China in a fairly similar situation. Russia, of course, very concerned about NATO, the military alliance. China, very concerned about a variety of different military alliances at their doorstep. Of course, we see the alliances between the United States, Japan, Taiwan. We look at, of course, AUKUS, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Australia. We see, of course, the tensions constantly rising bit by bit, day by day, around Japan, around the Senkaku Islands, around Taiwan. And of course, the Chinese government has made no bones about their intention to put military boots on the ground for the purpose of seizing land that they consider to be theirs. All right, so the common bottom denominator in the thorn in the side of Russia and China is what? Effectively, the United States and the military alliances headed up by the United States. Of course, as I mentioned in the case of Russia, we're talking about NATO, and China, well, there's a few different alliances that they are concerned about. So what does this do, ladies and gentlemen? This situation moves Russia and China closer together. So out of a necessity, they are effectively forced to join forces. Of course, both countries have a big, mighty military, so they have a tremendous combined force. And should these countries officially sign on the dotted line and become allies, they will be a huge fighting force to be reckoned with. And we potentially, if things continue to escalate, which it looks like they will, we could be on the very early stages of a major war, to the likes of which we have not seen since World War II. So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think that we will see a huge war, maybe to the effect of a world war? Or do you think it's just going to blow over, go away, get forgotten about, and let's move on to 2024? What do you think is going to happen overseas? Do you think Australian troops are going to be deployed? Do you think they'll be deployed to Ukraine? Maybe deployed to defend Taiwan? I want to know what you think, because MCJ Report's not just about me. It is about you, the awesome MCJ audience. And once again, thank you for tuning in every week. Go ahead and share the broadcast. Let's get to the next news article, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Alrighty, let me just make sure that we are connected. I can see that we are. Alrighty. I see the comments. I see lots of you on Facebook. There's Maddie. There's Bram. How you going, my friend? There's Stephen. Alright, good stuff. It looks like it's all systems go. Alrighty, so Lydia Thorpe addicted to publicity after clash with police. Now, Lydia Thorpe, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. Maybe she's having a midlife crisis. But honestly, I expect better behavior from a child. That's right. She has been crashing many protests and parades. It wasn't all that long ago that she crashed a gay pride parade, and she lay on the ground and she stopped one of the vehicles from moving forward and was eventually escorted out by police after she approached and pushed against police in a very aggressive manner. It seems that some rules apply to some people, but not to others. All right, or maybe it's something to the effect of all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And put in the comments if you understand the reference that I just made. But it looks like she's on a bit of a winning streak. So obviously, Lydia Thorpe, she resigned from the Greens and she has been on a tear. That's right, seeking publicity everywhere that she goes. And this time, she actually crashed a protest for women's rights, which has been headed up by Kelly J. Keane, who we're going to talk a little bit about later. To the extent of, well, she got violent, and the senator was actually thrown on the ground by police, and she crawled away on all fours. I think there's a video here. I'm going to show it to you. It's kind of shocking to look at. Let me just play it. Yeah, so that's a senator right there on the ground, and you hear the women in the background chanting, "Let women speak," and Senator Thorpe, I guess she does not want women to speak, or maybe she thinks that she's the only woman that should speak. Anyway, I'll keep playing here. Very strange behavior, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? What exactly do you think is going on there? I know that she's been through a lot. Of course, there was the saga with the ex-bikie leaving the Greens, crashing protests, just really what it seems like to me is she is throwing tantrums, and I hardly think that is the way that a senator should behave, let alone any decent adult that has at least a fraction of maturity. So this is a state of play with Australian politics. It's pretty disappointing, but it's not surprising. Anyway, let's keep moving along, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? All right, what do we have here? Some news from the United States of America, from the Republican state of Wyoming. So what do we have here? Wyoming bans transgender youths from girls' sports teams. It says here, quote, "The law, which takes effect July 1, will prohibit students of the male sex from competing on a team designated for students of the female sex." And I think that it's pretty interesting that these headlines need to be put into such definitive terms, ladies and gentlemen, because terminology over the years has become very blurry indeed when it comes to the topic of gender. But of course, what we have seen unravel before our very eyes have been biological males, or just to be really, really specific, people who were born as males, all right, actually going on in life and identifying as a member of the opposite sex and being welcomed in to all types of environments that were under other circumstances, original circumstances designed for women, right? Such as sports. Now, the whole idea and the reason why there's a women's division in sports is for equality, right? Because we have identified over the years that for better or worse, men do indeed have a strength advantage over women, but apparently it's controversial to say that. So it's no surprise that when these characters have actually entered women's sports, we've seen devastating results from sprinting, weightlifting, football, and there's also been instances where biological males have competed in mixed martial arts, and we've seen, of course, many women injured. So the state of Wyoming, recognizing that these practices put women at a disadvantage, females, girls at a disadvantage, and actually legislating to stop this practice altogether. So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think that we require these laws in Australia? I think you know what I think. I think things have gone way too far for far too long, and we need to be open about speaking out against this. We need to protect women, because unfortunately we see a situation where women's rights are actually going backwards. When you can have biological males entering women's only spaces, change rooms, sports, winning competitions like Woman of the Year, Australian Woman of the Year, and things like that, you know that we've gone to a very backwards place in society. Meanwhile, across the pond, you've got President Xi and President Putin basically sipping wine, laughing at us, and expressing that they won't need to fire a bullet because the West is destroying itself from the inside out. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we need to actually take this to a new level. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid to speak out. We know that it's wrong, and we know that if we do not take a stand now, then all the hard work that we have put in over the years in creating a harmonious society for everybody to live in could be undone within a single generation. And I think I speak on behalf of a lot of people when I say that we cannot allow that to happen. Alrighty, so those are the news articles. Now let me just make sure that we're connected once again. If you've just tuned in, go ahead and share the broadcast, get the word out there. This is MCJ Report. Of course, we tell the other side of the story, otherwise left untold by the mainstream media. Feeling a little bit more brazen this year. I mean, it's 2023 and you really can't hold back anymore, can you, ladies and gentlemen? If you see a problem, basically what you need to do is roll up your sleeves and get to work, because otherwise we know that things could go in a very disastrous direction if good people refuse to speak up. And I know that it's daunting sometimes. I know that you don't want to be the one person to draw attention to yourself, and sometimes in a group conversation you might think it's easier to keep your mouth shut, but you got to speak up, you got to be brave. And if you lose friends because you, for instance, stand up for women or stand up for children, then so be it. I don't think that people who think that women should be crushed by men are the type of people that make very good friends anyway. Wouldn't you say so, ladies and gentlemen? Alrighty, so let's get started. Let's get started on the show. So what do we have? What are we talking about? Alright, Victorian opposition leader John Pesutto moves to expel Moria Deeming. Alrighty, so it's been all over the news, ladies and gentlemen. If you live in Victoria And if you do not know what I'm talking about, then it is very likely that you have been living under a rock. So what is this in relation to? Well, over the weekend, on Saturday to be specific, there was a pro-women's rights rally held in the city, hosted by British activist by the name of Kelly J. Keane. That's right. Several women were invited to speak. The name of the rally was Let Women Speak. And the topic was particularly in relation to, of course, transgenderism. And we've seen the emergence of things like biological males that have been admitted into female changing rooms, admitted into female sports, and women's only spaces. So as you could imagine, there are, of course, many women, I would say the majority of women, who are very concerned about this trend, concerned for their safety, concerned for children, and they are speaking out and they are showing their faces because they simply refuse to stand by saying nothing. So that is the nature of the rally taking place. But unfortunately, this cause, this very much needed cause, was indeed overshadowed by a couple of factors. That's right. So on one hand, there were at least a few hundred far left-wing activists that showed up, and they were very violent. In fact, a couple of them, I think it was 2 or 3, were actually arrested for assaulting police officers. I also heard reports that a police horse was assaulted as well from this side. But of course, the hundreds of left-wing activists showed up. They were chanting. They were very angry because I guess they don't think that women should be allowed to speak. And they're under the presumption that women who are speaking out are somehow bigots or they're not tolerant, etc. But I hardly see what's not tolerant about, for example, not wanting biological males in women's prison, because those are the types of topics that were raised at the march. Now, also, there was another group of individuals, maybe about 20 or 30 to them, wearing all black, and they were performing the Nazi salute. That's right. They appeared to be self-styled neo-Nazis. And unfortunately, the media 100% covered these people and didn't cover any of the action from the main rally, which was Let Women Speak, which is actually really sad because so many of these women had such important information to convey to the public. So we look at the events that transpired, and of course we saw the Liberal Upper House MP Moria Deeming conduct a speech there on the day, and subsequently the day after we see the Liberal Party leader John Pesutto announce that he is going to move a motion to expel Moira from the Liberal Party due to some type of perceived association with the organizer, and a perceived association the organizer allegedly has with people who hold Nazi views, right? Or National Socialist views. Now, it's really clutching at straws here, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to break this down and try and get to the bottom of why is John taking this path and what is the evidence that he has produced so far, which I can tell you is, well, basically there's no evidence. But before I do, I'm going to show you a couple of clips here. First is from Daniel Andrews. The second is from John. I'll be back in just a minute.
That event, and what a disgrace on the steps of our Parliament, of all places, right? That event was a nasty, hateful gathering long before anybody used the Nazi salute. Mr. Pesutto and the Liberal Party can explain why some forms of hate are okay and other forms aren't. I think all hate is wrong.
All right, now Daniel Andrews wants to talk about hateful behaviour, but let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. There is nobody in Victoria more hateful, more spiteful than the disgraced so-called Premier, Dan Andrews. Now, it's important to point out that the hateful people that Dan are talking about, right, he said that the original hateful people before the, quote, other hateful people showed up, he's referring to women who have genuine concerns about their safety, women who have genuine concerns about their children. But instead of listening to these women, and that of course is the objective of the rally, Let Women Speak, and presumably we would all like it if people would listen to these women. Daniel Andrews has come out and said, well, no, they're hateful. And what he is seeking to do in such a toxic manner is he's seeking to conflate neo-Nazism with women's rights? Try and figure that one out. How does that exactly work in the mind of the Premier, that if somebody, a woman, wants to speak about women's rights, then they are somehow on the same page as a neo-Nazi? I mean, I would very much like to peer into the brain of Dan Andrews to see what's going on in there, but then again, maybe not. What do we have here? We've also got some remarks from the Liberal opposition leader, John Pesutto. Have a look at this.
What came to light on the weekend when seeing the awful circumstances on the steps of this parliament were that Moria Deeming, a member of the Parliamentary Liberal Party, had actively participated with and worked with the organisers of the rally. That rally was organised by people who have known and established links with people who have Nazi sympathies, promote white supremacist views and ethno-fascist views. That is odious, it is unacceptable. I will never, ever accept any member of the Parliamentary Liberal Party under my leadership ever associating with anybody who shares a platform with people who peddle hate, division and attack people for who they are.
Oh, Mr. Noble there, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? Mr. John, I have the moral high ground, Pesutto there. Now, what we see, of course, is a bit of a Dan Andrews tactic coming from the leader of the opposition there. Of course, conflating the actions of Moria Deeming there, an upper house MP who was legitimately there to speak up for women, trying to conflate her actions with neo-Nazis, which is absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, I don't see John actually speaking out against the leftist protesters who assaulted police officers. Maybe those are the people he actually supports. But I think more importantly, what we see from John's language is effectively the presumption of guilt before innocence. Now, one of the most fundamental attributes that we have in our society is supposed to be the presumption of innocence before the presumption of guilt. But John appears to have had a knee-jerk reaction. He said, no, we're not far right. We're not associated with these people. And let me just get rid of anyone who could potentially be tied to anyone. So what my reaction was, I said, my goodness, this guy, John Pesutto, the leader of the opposition, he is punishing one of his own for a supposed association with somebody who has an alleged association with somebody else. Do you see how many really obscure dots need to be connected in order for this man's argument to hold up? So now you don't just take John's word for it, all right? Now John says that he and his team, they've done research, and supposedly this organizer, Kelly J. Keane, has been involved in a whole bunch of these, quote, neo-Nazi interactions. But the organizer of the protest herself, right, she denies those claims. So Avi caught up with her just the other day. Take a look.
If the leader of the so-called opposition, who's planning on expelling Moira today, based on the lie that you're associated to neo-Nazis and Nazi sympathisers that he named, what would you say to him?
I'd say, I hope you have a good lawyer, because I think libel and defamation laws are pretty robust in Australia. So it's a shameful thing to do. And Moira's standing up for the safeguarding of children. You're supposed to be conservatives, for God's sake.
As leader, I will be moving the motion to expel Moria Deeming from the Parliamentary Liberal Party. That rally was organised by people who have known and established links with people who have Nazi sympathies, promote white supremacist views and ethno-fascist views.
So the leader of the Liberal Party, John Pesutto, is planning on expelling his MP, Moira, over the fact that she simply joined your protest. Now, he has conceded that she may not have even known that those Nazis were going to co-op to hijack it, but he says that the reason why he's going forward, pushing forward with cancelling her, is because of her association to you and your association to Nazis that he named.
She's done videos with Richard Spencer, Mark Collett,
Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke.
I've never met or spoken to either of those men ever. I've got no connection with those men. It's my Wikipedia. Someone's done a Wikipedia page to try and silence me, to shut me up, which I just refuse to do. And I can't even edit it. It's got like some weird lock on it, so I can't do anything about that. But to make claims based on a Wikipedia page when you're supposed to be a serious politician is preposterous. What a shameful man.
So if it's based on that, do you think he now should withdraw his application to expel her?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I don't believe in guilt by association. I think if you live by that rule, you will die by it. I think it's a ridiculous thing to do, and it's not what grown-ups should be doing anyway. But, yeah, of course he should take it back. Moira's a really brave politician. In 2023, she's one of the few that will stand up for the safeguarding of children.
And do you think you deserve an apology?
I think for Moira's sake, I deserve an apology. I don't really care for apologies. I think they're a waste of time. I think the damage is already done. So I don't care whether he apologises to me for my sake, but I do think for the just for the respect of politics in general and the electorate in Australia, I think he definitely should withdraw those statements and apologise.
All right, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The organiser there, once again, her name is Kelly J. Keane, denying these very bold accusations thrown at her by the leader of the opposition. Now, we took a bit of a look into this. I took a bit of a look into this here at home. I did some digging around, and I could not find the references to these videos and the assertions made there by John Pesutto, and I wonder if they exist. But also, we saw on Sky News that Peter Credlin, she looked for these pieces of information as well. And, well, I can tell you that Peter Credlin at Sky News, she has access to a lot more staff and a lot more resources than your buddy Morgan on MCJ Report. She couldn't find anything. So I've got a little clip here of Peter pressing John on this particular issue in relation to the evidence of this association. Take a look.
Now, I haven't gone through her Wikipedia page myself. I've gone and looked independently. I can't find her being involved in a panel or speaking on a platform with any of these characters. I mean, I agree with you, David Duke, Michael Collette, Richard Spencer, I'd run a mile from them. But she has not, that I can see, had anything to do with them.
Well, I've annotated the material that I've now circulated to the party room. We've gone through that and cited the references for the material we've put. So I'm interested to know what Jose Marcus said.
But what is it? Because I've seen that she has been interviewed by someone who years earlier has interviewed them, but she's not shared a platform with them.
There's been various protests or videos or discussion groups. There's a list of them that I've got in there, and I can't recall them off the top of my head here, but we've annotated them in the material I've put there. So I'm confident that those materials, which are available for people to look at themselves, can be supported by the references I've included in the notice. So I haven't just gone to the party room and said, hey, here's some stuff I downloaded. There's proper referencing of the material.
Yeah, but if Moria Deeming is going to be expelled from the Liberal Party because she was involved in the organisation of an event with a UK woman who was interviewed by someone, and that person interviewed someone that you and I both think is pretty reprehensible, that's like 10 degrees of separation to throw someone out of the party. Is that what it's about?
No, there's more than that. And there's a range of events or interviews, discussions that we've referenced in the material. So it's not just one. When Neil asked me about that this morning on Melbourne Radio, I was referencing just the top of that.
All right, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. John really appearing to clutch at straws there in his, I would say, pretty blatant attack there on Moria Deeming, one of the Liberal upper house MPs who I say has been doing a fine job. That's right, a fine job since elected to Parliament. And she goes out and she speaks up for women's rights. And Dan Andrews comes out and says that that's a hateful thing to do. And John comes out of the woodworks and basically says, hey, Dan, I agree with you. And don't worry, Dan, I'm on the job. I'm going to get rid of this person. So don't worry too much, Dan, because Johnny Boy's going to go get him. And that's just kind of what it appears to me on face value, because The evidence cited by John, it just seems really weak, and this guilt by having a perceived association with somebody who has an alleged association with somebody else, it makes me think that maybe, just maybe, there's more to this story and there's more that's actually not being said. And maybe it's possible that John is moving this motion for reasons outside of the declared reasons that he is putting forward to the public. So let's have a bit of a talk about that, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? So let's talk a little bit about John Pesutto. He's the opposition leader of the Liberal Party. So that's him there in a photo right there celebrating the Midsummer Pride March. So John is a very left-wing type of character, just so you know, even within the Liberal Party. Now, you hear about the factions in the Labor Party all the time, but in the Liberal Party, you've got left-wing faction, right-wing faction. You've got the Pride branch, of course, of the Liberal Party, and there's members in the Liberal Party. They do not all agree with each other. They do not all get along. They have internal fights. They sometimes seek to have certain people removed from the party. That's right. So you can have a rebellion against certain members, and it wouldn't be the first time that it's happened. So that's John right there, and you can also see David Southwick in the photo. So I'm going to wrap up my final thoughts on why this is, and I thought about this, quite a lot, because I think in life, when something doesn't make sense, you really need to question what could the ulterior motives be. So in wrapping up my thoughts about this entire matter, I'm going based on the presumption that John is not being straightforward with the public, and my very, very strong view, let's call it a very strong view, is that his reason for seeking to expel Moira is outside of the declared reason that he has put forward to the public. And I state that opinion based on what I would consider to be an extremely, extremely weak argument that most definitely appears to be lacking any weight whatsoever. And I also want to point out that after the rally, Moira was speaking with some of the ladies. They did a live stream, and she expressed her disgust at the individuals that were performing the Nazi salute, and a lot of the participants in the protest, the Let Women Speak protest, they actually felt really scared of those guys. So what do we have here? First of all, I say that John Pesutto is attempting to character assassinate Moria Deeming. Now, once again, this is my opinion. I don't claim it to be absolute fact. That's right. I want you to think for yourself. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm telling you this is my opinion. So the question is, why is he attempting to assassinate the character of Moira? Alrighty, let's take a look here. Well, first of all, he's very left-wing. She's a conservative. That just sort of gets you thinking a bit, doesn't it? Number one, this motion proposed by John could have been a knee-jerk reaction. It appears that this man is so very much obsessed with optics, and it could have been that any potential link to the far right was enough for John to say, nope, knee-jerk reaction, I better take measures to get rid of this person, because otherwise the Liberal Party is going to sink. Let me tell you something, John. The Liberal Party is already sinking. Have you taken a look at your numbers in Parliament recently? Have you taken a look at your donors who don't want to open up their wallets anymore? All right, so could have been a knee-jerk reaction, just, oh no, what do? I think this is the best thing to do, all right? We're brainstorming here, guys. So, number two, John simply wants Moira out of the party. Well, that's another option, of course, as I mentioned. John being a very left-wing sort of dude. Maybe he doesn't like conservatives. Maybe he doesn't like strong conservative women that actually stand up for important matters, such as protecting women's rights and children. Moving along here, number three, John supports the counter-protesters. Maybe he supports the socialist protesters, and he really identifies with what their cause is. Of course, a few of them assaulted police officers and had to be dragged away, and were reportedly throwing all sorts of strange liquids at the Let Women Speak people. So maybe he's just on board with them. And I haven't seen John call out any of the antisocial behavior from that particular side. All right, he called out the neo-Nazis, yet fair enough, call that out. We don't want to see Nazi salutes. I don't think many people support that at all, and nor should people. But he's been very silent in regards to the other side. Number 4, John received pressure from Liberal donors. Who knows? Maybe there's some maybe there's some guys that still open their wallets and they said, John, we want these Conservatives out if you still want our money. So, hey, just putting it out there. Not saying this is what happened, just saying potentially this sort of thing is happening. What do we have next? Number 5, John seeking to appease Dan Andrews. That's what it seems to me. It seems like John is really singing the same tune as Daniel Andrews. And why would he? He's supposed to be the opposition. What John should have done, right, if he actually had a backbone, is he would have presumed his team member to be innocent before guilty. He would have backed his team member. And when these allegations came out, he should have come out and he said, no. Moira would never knowingly associate or seek to be associated with anyone from a Nazi ideology. How dare you accuse her of that? And Dan Andrews, how about we talk about your track record here in Victoria over the past 3 years? How about we talk about the manner that you, Mr. Premier, have acted in ways that can only be described as Nazi-esque, forcing an entire population to take a drug against their will, locking people down, beating people in the street, arresting people arbitrarily. It is you, Daniel Andrews, Mr. Premier, that needs to thoroughly examine your behaviour and whether or not your behaviour matches up with behaviour that is reminiscent of Nazi Germany. That's what he should have said. Is that really that hard, ladies and gentlemen? Is it really that hard to back your team members and to presume innocence before guilt and then return fire at the opposition, return fire at the enemy? But he's not going to do that. And that's why the Liberal Party is going down the drain. That's why they're sinking. They don't have the guts to defend their own. And I think that this move by John Pesutto is going to be the end of his leadership, because the party is very divided. And John has his little buddies, his little allies there. David Southwick, who has been the member for Caulfield since the dawn of time. And there's an upper house MP there in Southern Metro, Georgie Crozier, and they're backing him up. But it seems like to me that this John character, he's kind of reminiscent of a schoolyard bully that has decided he wants to pick on someone in the school ground. He's got his buddies together and he's cooked up a plan to get rid of someone. And unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of Liberals that, well, they're shadow ministers, right? And they're receiving pay above the minimum pay package that a backbencher would get. So, you know, and they're obviously hoping that at some point down the track, they might be a minister and get another pay increase. So you're going to see self-interest really rule the day when it comes to how a lot of these Liberal members vote on the motion to expel Moira from the party. It's very sad, and it really shows a lack of courage, and that's not what we need from opposition. From opposition, we need fierce fighting spirit. I believe Moira's got it. I mean, she puts herself out there. She was actually assaulted at that rally, as were many women. And I say that her calibre is probably too high for the Liberal Party. So Moira, if you're watching, Freedom Party of Victoria, I say, is a more fitting home for you. What we do at Freedom Party of Victoria is we just shoot straight between the eyes. We don't hold back, and we're not constrained by these perceived perceptions of perceptions and alleged associations with somebody that may have had an association with somebody 5 years ago who spoke to a certain character down a dark alleyway one day that maybe, just maybe, had an unsavory conversation that they shouldn't have had. All right, that's not how we operate here. And this is why the average age of members in the Liberal Party is 73, because they're not attracting new members, because there is nothing inspiring there. The Victorian public do not feel inspired by the Liberal Party leadership. Before we had Matt Guy, right? Matt Guy, who threatened to expel Renee Heath from the party before she was even elected. And these young up-and-comers, they're good. They're actually putting forward a good voice, and they're standing up for freedom, and they're speaking up on topics that matter. And what do you get from the Liberal management? No, we need to get rid of these people because we might upset Dan Andrews. That is a recipe for failure, and the Liberal Party will be destroyed if they continue to employ this tactic. All right, moving along here. Question: will John speak up for the many concerns expressed by women? Well, I don't think so. It was a great rally that took place over the weekend, and I've listened to all the women, listened to what they had to say. Very, very relevant points. I don't agree with everything, but I think it's important that, especially in a democracy, we need to hear what people have to say. And when it comes to John Pesutto from the Liberal Party, I think it's a very weak move. I think that he's concerned about the optics. Considering that he appears to be of a very left-wing nature himself, it's possible that he was just waiting for any opportunity to arise to make a move to expel Moira. I think it's kind of reminiscent of being a bully in the workplace and seeking to push his weight around. But I think ultimately it's going to backfire on him, and he's going to regret it when the cards fall, because nobody respects a leader that does not back up their own people. Is that fair enough? You know, you've got teammates, and you need to support your team, back your team, presume that your team has done the right thing. And if your team has not done the right thing, then of course there needs to be penalties and punishment. But persecuting somebody for a suspicion, an alleged association with somebody that potentially is associated with someone else 5 years ago, spoke to this person, it's extremely weak, and it is masking the real intention. For that reason, I say that John, unfortunately, is not an honest guy. He's not being forthcoming with the real reason in relation to why he wants to get rid of Moira. And I think that the voting population, or at least the Liberal members out there, the Liberal voters, will lose an enormous amount of confidence in the Victorian Liberal Party. And Freedom Party of Victoria is here to welcome those people in. We will happily work with you. You're invited to branch meetings. Go to www.freedomparty.net.au, sign up, become a member today. It's free. We're not going to run off scared with our tails between our legs. We're not going to capitulate to the nonsensical, hateful demands of Dan Andrews. We'll stick a finger in the man's chest and call him out for the inept, unfit leader that he is. And unfortunately, I think this is just another nail in the coffin of the Victorian Liberal Party. And it sucks, because people like Moira actually give hope to people who vote Liberal that maybe the party is going to be revived. And then you've got little John comes along and says, nope, let's put a stop to that. So anyway, go ahead and share this broadcast. Those are my thoughts. I think it's very weak. And what can I say? It's just another uninspiring day in the Socialist Republic of Victoria. Anyway, so what I've got here are some highlights from the Let Women Speak rally, because supposedly that's what the rally was about in the first place, for the general public to hear women speak. So let women speak, hear what they have to say. Let's understand their concerns. Let's understand their reservations about biological males invading the women's only spaces in society. And let's act on what their concerns are. Now, I don't necessarily agree with everything that all the women have said, but I most definitely agree with a very big majority of it. But I certainly don't think these women, by any stretch of the imagination, deserve to be shouted down, let alone cancelled on mainstream media. The mainstream media was fully obsessed with covering the neo-Nazis, but they should have covered what these brave and courageous women had to say. And I think it's a miscarriage of justice that these courageous women spoke out and did not receive the type of publicity that they should have. So what I've done on MCJ Report is I've put together a compilation, a bit of a highlight video of all the women speakers from Saturday. I've picked out hopefully some good parts. It goes for about 20 minutes. So please go ahead, share the broadcast, let women speak, get it out there, and let's hear what these courageous people have to say.
Not really, I don't care. But I will say that unashamedly, unapologetically, I will put women first. And that is every woman. Formulate your arguments. Formulate your arguments. Try and convince people that men actually can change to women. And we might listen. But we know it's not true. You know it's not true. It's absolutely disgusting. The only thing you've got is mantras.
The overall effect of these linguistic changes in mainstream health communications is the opposite of inclusion. Using confusing, jargon-like terms make health messages more complicated. And by making these changes, it raises the reading level and excludes vulnerable groups of women who need health communications to be as clear and simple as possible. This is especially important for vulnerable populations who struggle to read and understand health information, or know which service to use and when, such as women from non-English speaking backgrounds, women with low literacy, and women with an intellectual disability. This is not okay.
We are here because women like Mary Lee and Mary Colton of the suffragettes fought long and hard for our right to vote. This happened in 1894 in South Australia, but only for some women. This did not, but not all. Not until 1962 was that complete. That's when Aboriginal women were finally included in the right to vote. In 2019, the Andrews government and the Greens took our sex-based rights away from us, quietly and stealthily. Women's voices were not allowed to be at the table during this decision. Only the trans voices. Natalie Hudgens, you are the Minister for Women in Education.
Trans rights, fuck all! Trans rights now! Trans rights now!
Let women speak!
Let go! Let go! You grab him, we'll grab this. Let go! Let go! Let go! In 2023, it's absolutely revolting. It should frighten everybody that women talking about our rights and our spaces cannot do it safely. And they think they're on the right side of history.
You can have a naked man in your change room, and if you complain, you get kicked out. The law is on their side. Are you kidding me?
And what we object to, it's not people who a man wants to pop on a frock. Knock yourself out, Dave, that's fine. But what we object to is the framework, the legal framework that is being imposed on us by our craven legislature, by our institutions, our media and our organisations that take away women as a legally recognised category. We object to those laws, and we say to the people in power who make the decisions, write the policy, write the laws, where are you? Why aren't you standing up for women and girls? Why are you allowing the state to intrude into families and tell parents it's unlawful for them to protect their children?
I've decided it's time to speak up, because I've decided that not speaking up feels way, way worse. If we women do not say something, then the other side just pushes further and further, and we eventually lose our identities as mothers and women. We've been silenced too long by our workforce, by speaking out against a very sinister agenda aiming to silence all women. Silenced by so-called experts, silenced as parents and carers, silenced as widows, silenced as single women, silenced also through being ignored and being labelled deplorables.
I encourage each and every one of you to stand up and speak and challenge this issue. It has the potential to take our tamariki away from us, our children, our mokopuna, our grandchildren. As a co-founder of Manawahine Korero, we are very, very concerned. We see how this contamination is sweeping through white middle class. Groups of girls are suddenly coming out as non-binary or boys. When will that happen to us? We barely survived the first colonisation. This, in our opinion, is the second, and we will not lie down! Te Moria!
Discrimination is when someone takes steps to prepare or train someone to do something or to participate in something that is against their interests or causes them harm. The Dan Andrews government and our ABC are master manipulators. They've manipulated the public to accept home brothels in neighborhoods and allow children of any age to be present in them. They have manipulated the public to accept the total erasure of women's and children's boundaries. They say children can be born in the wrong body. They say transitioning kids makes them happy. They scream inclusion while excluding half the population from our rights. 2 + 2 = 5. Well, we're here today to break that manipulator's spell. We say there's no such thing as a trans child. We say no to stereotypes and the people who want to enforce them. We know that a child's choice of toys does not define their sex. We know tomboys are girls. And many of them will be lesbians. Doublespeak is the manipulator's best friend, and the ABC and Andrews government use it to control us. There is nothing more Orwellian than the government's Change or Suppression Practices Prohibition Act. They kept that one quiet.
Hi everyone, my name's Kat and I'm going to keep this really short. But basically, as an autistic woman, I've just found that this really affects the autistic community. I actually had a best friend, and at the age of 33, she decided to transition, and she was given testosterone shots only after 15 weeks of going to a so-called gender specialist.
My name is Nina Valens. I'm an out and proud radical feminist, and I know that there are only 2 sexes. Okay, I'm going to give you a trigger warning. For people who are a little bit sensitive and care about things like natural justice, integrity, evidence-based policy, you might find my story a bit tough. I was a member of the Greens for over 10 years. In August 2019, I was emailed by the Greens misconduct panel telling me that they were investigating misconduct allegations against me. I appeared to have formed a women's lobby group called the Victorian Women's Guild, which was lobbying against the changes to birth certificate laws in Victoria. And apparently I'd also written a letter to The Age. I had to respond to these allegations, and I had no more detail than that. Principles of natural justice mean that you should know the substance of the complaints against you when you have to respond to them, but that's not how they do things in the Greens. Finally, after some pushing for particulars of the complaints, I found out that the letter to The Age was the one which said that the changes to the law could have profound implications for women's only spaces. And maybe women should pay this price of allowing men into women's sports. But we have a right to discuss this. I'd also been quoted in The Australian as saying that women who are survivors of domestic violence and who are prisoners have a right to women's only spaces.
A law was proposed to amend the Sex Discrimination Act, which had been introduced in 1984 for the purpose of eliminating discrimination against women in the public arena. An amendment proposed to take the definitions of man and woman out of the Sex Discrimination Act. But when it came time to discuss the amendment, the other politicians said, hey, Have we really thought of the long-term effects on women here? They decided not to pass the amendment until they had thought about all the implications properly. That ends.
We all know that women's human rights are based on sex, which was removed from the Sex Discrimination Act. Now, the 21 census was an interesting one. They included a question on non-binary, and they could tick non-binary in the sex section of the 21 census. And at the end, the Bureau of Statistics said that they didn't collect enough useful information because people define non-binary in lots of different ways.
My name's Moria Deeming. I'm a newly elected MP in the Victorian Parliament. People told me that I only got elected because nobody knew what I thought. But I've been doing this for 15 years with my friends in the Greens Party and the Labor Party and every party conceivable. Today I'm actually going to read out a message from a Muslim friend of mine who was too afraid to be here because of behaviour like that. She has said that she came to Australia because she knew that in Australia human rights were advocated for strongly and she would have protection in Australia. She thought that Australia was a paradise, especially for herself as a woman. And she thought that in Australia, everybody, regardless of religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, any other belief of any other kind, they got to respect each other's beliefs and boundaries. And now she is devastated to find out that she has less rights in Australia than she did back home. She has said that boundaries are the emotional, mental and physical fences of every human that are erected in order to protect and maintain our psychological and physical needs, whether it be a human or an animal. And if an animal can understand and respect boundaries, why can't they? She is seeking that the government will do their job and stand up for the rights that she was promised when she came to Australia lawfully and legally, and that she said if the LGBTQI can have their rights, that's fine, but why does it involve taking away everybody else's rights? And she wants to say a big thank you to everybody out here today, and especially Kelly J. Thank you.
Sorry. I've condensed it. I said basically in the beginning that I was raised on the tolerant left. I used to be an ally. So like most, when COVID hit, I ended up chronically online. It was during that time that I finally saw just how deranged the left had become. But there was no way around it. My tolerant left had gone and lost its fucking mind. Trading intolerance chips for totalitarianism, for some shut up, get on your knees and comply. Misogyny, that slimy hand around women's throats that I saw as a child, misogyny had had a revamp. It was glamorous now, all sparkly. It had some flags and new allies. Violent beta males wearing hankies on their faces, giving a wink and a nod to their comrades while screaming down women who just don't fancy having girl dick shoved in their daughters' faces in the change rooms at the pool. Their green-haired 20-something female conspirators feeling righteous while shielding trans-identified men who'd raped little girls and then had their chance with female inmates while imprisoned with them against their will. Freshly anointed trans women athletes mopping the tracks and stalls of the blood, sweat and tears of female athletes who they'd beaten, those tirelessly dedicated women from whom they'd stole. Women were just a feeling. We weren't mothers anymore, we were birthers. I hadn't breastfed for 3 long fucking years. Sore and overtouched breasts, loving but dazed and tired from sleepless nights. I chest-fed for inclusion. Our lesbian and gay friends weren't allowed same-sex attraction. Their orientation was just a genital preference for backwards boomers, too vanilla and hate-filled to enjoy someone's vagina without wincing or take that organic strap because it's real and so it's better, ladies. Now suck it. Pedophiles had had a rebrand too. Minor attracted people they were, stunning and brave and here to stay. And if we made a peep about it, we were alt-right fascists, or the slightly lesser charge, alt-right fascist adjacent, because apparently safeguarding children is violent. Protecting their little bodies is far right. I used to be an ally, but now after having my compassion as a woman weaponised against me, being abused by filthy misogynists and their tragic brainwashed handmaidens, watching our lesbian sisters have to fight again for men to get the fuck out of their bedrooms and social spaces.
Only a dickhead like the Victorian Minister for Equality, Harriet Shing, would think it's a good idea to put men convicted of rape and sexual assault in women's prisons. Only a dickhead like the head of the Australian Sports Commission, Kieran Perkins, would claim there would be human carnage unless men are allowed to compete in women's swimming. Only an absolute dickhead like Victorian Premier Dan Andrews would claim that no one can point to a problem with regards to transgender laws.
I'm a woman of the left. I got harassed because I was going to come here, but this is about solidarity. It doesn't matter what walk of life you are. You were born female, and that is the only thing. That is the only thing that we are talking about here in this space.
Hello, I'm Jennifer, and I've been waiting for bloody years to get up here and speak. I am so sick of this. I can't believe that we have riot police having to protect women from a bunch of people that are deluded. It's disgusting. I just want to thank Kelly J for coming all the way from England to be here with us and give us support, because we really need it. I want to thank all the women and men that are here. You're so brave, and thank you. And also the organisers, thank you very much. I just want to say firstly, like really basically, that men who identify as women are biologically men. Women who identify as men are biologically women. A woman is an adult human female with double X chromosomes and the potential to produce large gametes, right? Eggs, that's what we do. Sex is a binary reality for all mammals on Earth, and you can't change your sex, just so we're absolutely clear. And to be pro-women's rights does not equate with being anti-trans or transphobic. Wake the fuck up. Seriously.
First, I was a swerve, and now I'm a TERF. And that's because I believe that women are full, valuable, female human beings. But the consumption of the female body has been marketed to women, and society has bought it. Have we seen the delightful sign back there? Trans whore power. How is that powerful? Did we see the female protesters come in? How does taking your shirt off and showing your breasts, nothing wrong with breasts, all women have them, but how does that empower you? Women have been conditioned to see prostitution as empowering, pornography, surrogacy. But empowerment of the unanimated female body drags every other woman a little bit closer to the event horizon of tits without humanity. Is it any wonder that women have now become meat suits that anyone, any man can dress up as if a woman is made more powerful somehow by being used? Then it becomes a good thing for her to disappear. And so all the young girls coming of age, all the autistic girls, all the lesbian girls, all the girls who do actually want boys they like to be attracted to them, they have been given a piece of shit for womanhood, and they have been told that it is shinola. Is it any wonder that they not only don't want to be women anymore, they actually believe that they can tinker with their bodies and literally stop being one? I don't want the product that I have been told to sell. Our Melbourne Royal Children's Hospital Gender Service is the largest in the country. They see children up to their 16th birthday and have patients with interventions recorded as young as 3. It is over 70% girls seeing the Melbourne Clinic, and this is from an historical average of boys mainly facing with gender dysphoria, 80% who turned out to be healthy gay men when they growed up. Now it's 70% girls, with high rates of mental health problems, bullying, ADHD, mild to severe autism. About half present with autism. But in 2019, at the Royal Commission into Mental Health in Victoria, the head of the clinic, Dr. Telfer, lobbied for long-term secure funding so they could give double mastectomies in that clinic. She cited an American study where mastectomies were performed on girls from the age of 13, saying that the study found decreased levels of chest dysphoria once the girl's breasts were removed. Well, funny that. Why would a girl feel more comfortable? So as male author Andrea Longshoe says, while he's claiming to be a woman, femaleness is a universal sex defined by self-negation, making room for the desires of others. He thinks he can inhabit us because we will empty ourselves to make room, and I say, I am full.
You need your voices. I believe Kelly J when she says she never loses, but she needs people standing here. So I'm begging you, if you're sitting on the internet and just observing and saying nothing, not even being able to put up a blooming social media post, where the fuck are you? We need you.
We are absolutely sick and tired of it. Women have had enough. We raise teenagers. We don't need to be bothered about what you silly children say on the streets. So, to those people that came here today, if you can stand next to someone, even though you know that there is precious little with which you agree, except that women deserve human rights and our spaces and our dignity, then I promise we will win.
All right, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. A big thank you to all the women who spoke out, and it was under very difficult circumstances as well, by the way. The hundreds of counter-protesters from the far left side of activism, they were very aggressive and acting in a very intimidating manner, and it's important to point out that many of the people who were opposing the women speaking, of which you just witnessed and listened to, are actually males. So on Saturday, there was a situation whereby large amounts of males wanted to, I suppose, intimidate women in an aggressive manner. And that is not very manly. Let me say that. I think it's disgraceful, and everybody deserves to have a voice, whether you agree with people or not. But of course, we see this behavior from the radical left, especially here in the state of Victoria. They seek to shut people down simply because they disagree with what somebody has to say. And once again, of course, it's a shame that the mainstream media only covered the neo-Nazi types and refused to cover the people that Australians most definitely need to be listening to. Alrighty, so we're just about to wrap the show up there, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Of course, if you'd like to support the show, you can become an MCJ Report member from $5 per month in order to help propel the show forward to secure the longevity of MCJ Report. So if you'd like to subscribe and become a member, it is www.mcjreport.com. Click on the membership tab and away you go. Alrighty, so a bit overtime tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Usually our show is 1 hour, but we've gone to 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Sharon, Izza, Patchy, Dana, Judy, how you going? Donna, Creekers. I can see a whole bunch of you on Rumble, which I think is really the platform of choice these days. And I will catch you really soon, ladies and gentlemen. So stay strong, keep fighting. Go and register your details at mcjreport.com to make sure that you never miss an episode. And I'll catch you on the next broadcast.